Now, Trump's time in office has been filled with hypocrisy and contradictions, and clearly his campaign is as well, because while encouraging his fans to commit a crime, he is staking his re-election bid on a so-called law and order platform steeped in race and culture wars. That itself is a contradiction. Trump's relationship to the law is one of convenience. The last 4 years, his adult life, really, demonstrate that. Trump creates as much disorder as possible, then tries to use scare tactics to trick people into thinking that he alone can solve the problem that he has either created or has worsened. The president's idea of order is really oppression. Trump has achieved very little from a policy perspective during his presidency, so he doesn't have a record to run on, at least not one that isn't steeped in racism and discontent, which is why his campaign is centered on race and culture wars, the flames of which he continues to fan. Take, for example, his recent visit to Kenosha, Wisconsin, which has seen days of protests after the police-involved shooting of Jacob Blake. Trump took the trip after local leaders expressly asked him not to do so, arguing that his presence could inflame an already volatile situation. But he went anyway, on a trip that looked like a propaganda campaign, including a photo op in front of a destroyed business where it looked like the owner had decided to join Trump and praise his law and order response, except the man in the photo is the former owner of the store, whom the White House recruited after the current owner of the store said he wanted nothing to do with Donald Trump. This whole conversation Trump is pushing on policing sets aside America's system of justice and accepts that not only are law enforcement officers responsible for policing, but that they can be judge, jury, and executioner. So is there an antidote to all of this, or has too much damage already been done? Joining me now to discuss this, Brittany Packnett Cunningham. She's the founder of Love and Power Words. She's an MSNBC contributor and a former fellow at the Harvard Institute of Politics. Also with me, Roland Martin. He's the host and managing editor of #RolandMartinUnfiltered. He's the author of the first President Barack Obama's Road to the White House. Welcome to both of you, and thank you for being with us. Brittany, yesterday I invoked you. I read a tweet you had a couple of days ago, a remarkable thread on Twitter, and I want to put that tweet up, and it says the problem fundamentally is that we have conceded that the idea that the police should be killing anyone. They shouldn't, guilty or not. In a system in which due process is supposed to be the foundation, the police are not judge, jury, or executioner. So this idea that whenever we talk about a victim of police violence, we talk about whether or not they had a felony charge, or whether they were in the commission of a crime, or whether they were intoxicated, or in Breonna Taylor's case, whether or not she was part of a gang or something like that, which is not true. But the point is justification for police violence.
That's absolutely the point. We see a retroactive justification for behaviors that the police are involved in. And often Americans will simply say, when the police have shot someone, well, there must have been a reason. The problem at its root is that we have conceded that level of power over to the police. There are multiple developed nations all across the world who kill fewer than a dozen people by police hands every single year, some as few as 0. It is completely possible to live in a world and in a country where the police don't kill people. Reimagining public safety, divesting from institutions that continue to have a habit of killing in America over 1,000 people a year, and putting that money in communities so that we are all experiencing communities where none of us are fearful for our lives and we can be healthy from the ground up instead of over-policed from the top down. That should be the American way. That's what matches our ideals. That's what democracy is supposed to be all about. And the people who derive their power from us as constituents should be beholden to keeping us safe and alive at the very basic level.
Roland Martin, with less than 2 months to go before the election, I'm reminded of conversations you and I had on a regular basis 6 years ago after the killing of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. And one of the points you made is that while the fight for justice moves on and must continue, the Democratic fight fight is what is in front of us right now. The idea that people have got to vote and speak with their ballot, the one thing that people have across this country and African Americans do have, despite efforts to suppress their vote. I assume you have the same view of this right now, that if you believe what Brittany just said, then you have to make sure you're registered and you figure out how you're voting in this election.
Sure, it doesn't change. And the reality is, if you study how do you affect change in the system, here's the issue here. First of all, if you're on the local level, do you have a city manager form of government, or do you have a strong mayor form of government? Who hires the police chief? Who puts these policies in? Who negotiates the contracts with these various police unions? Also, all the immunity laws on the state level, state policymakers. And so same thing happening on the federal level. You did it. The George Floyd Act wasn't actually passed by Congress, passed in the House, held up, not voted upon in the Senate. The issue that you have is that politics plays a central role in this. But also, when you talk about consent decrees, keep in mind, politics plays a role in that. Who wins? Trump over Hillary Clinton. What's the first thing that Attorney General Jeff Sessions does? He says, we want to get rid of the police consent decree in Baltimore. A federal judge and the then mayor then says, no, we want to keep it in, it stays. They then try to pull out of the consent decree in Chicago. Same thing. The Attorney General fought it, it stayed. And so you've had Donald Trump, Jeff Sessions, Bill Barr, who've all said, oh, this is going to hurt the morale of police with these police consent decrees. Politics plays a role in the people who are put in charge of that. And so when people say, I want justice, they got to see it. But here's the flip side. You have to then deliver. You got a black mayor there in Rochester who people are saying, you haven't done enough. There are black mayors other places as well. And so even when you have black mayors, you still have the power of police who control the process. And that is the issue that we must face in this country.
So, Brittany, I think that's important because people get excited by presidential elections. They don't get excited as much at state levels or interim elections or municipal elections. But let's just focus on the presidential election right now. Nate Silver put out a tweet on September 2nd, the day that you also put out that great string of tweets. The chance of a Biden electoral college win if he wins the popular vote by X points. If he wins it by 6%, it's by 0 to 1 points. It's just a 6% chance of an electoral college win. If Biden wins the electoral vote, the popular vote by 1 to 2 points, it jumps to just 22%. So the point here is that Joe Biden winning this election, despite who you talk to around you, is still in doubt.
It absolutely is, unfortunately. And I think Roland makes such a critical point. There are nearly 18,000 police departments in this entire country. It will take action at the local, state, and federal level to move this. But on the issue of the federal level, when we're talking about abolishing things, at the top of the list should be the Electoral College. We have continued to watch this administration and this campaign use these structures and systems, which, let's be clear, were built on foundations of racism. When you look at the Electoral College, they've been using those systems to their advantage and exploiting them to either win in 2016 or right now in 2020 to maintain their power. That's why we're seeing this law and order framing, which we should be rejecting out of hand. Why? Because the evidence doesn't bear it out. 93% of racial justice protests over the last 3 months have been without incident. The Washington Post cited several studies on this. What we know is that the 7% that are left where there was an incident, that includes violence perpetuated by the police, which, let's remember, is why the protests began in the first place. We continue to see reporting about the turnout levels in 2016, laying blame on Black communities and indigenous communities and communities of color without naming the widespread voter suppression that the GOP engaged in then and is still engaging in now. Wisconsin is unfortunately a great example of this. Trump won Wisconsin by 23,000 votes, but 45,000 voters were deterred by a voter ID law, which have been shown over time to be inherently racist in nature. We've also continued to see Black men in particular be targets of propaganda and be used as tokens by the RNC, by the GOP, by Donald Trump, as he continues to say that he's been the best president for Black people since Abraham Lincoln. This this is a setup. We have to make sure that we don't fall for it. And those of us in the media have to be having a conversation that presents true facts and full context so that people can make educated decisions.
Hey, Ali, I have to say this here, and this is real simple. You got to be explicit as possible. White America has to own this. 68 to 69% of all the votes that are going to be cast in this election will be by white voters. Donald Trump is specifically trying to appeal to white voters, especially targeting white suburban women and white men. We can talk about black turnout, Latino turnout, Asian turnout, but the reality is white voters have to confront the issue of race. They have to reject the racist appeals of Donald Trump, and they must be willing to acknowledge what we're seeing, the level of racism in police departments. When you had a FBI report in 2015 saying they were infiltrated by white supremacists and militia groups. And we have just the Arkansas sheriff just resigned the other day, a South Carolina cop. In Louisiana, we have seen racist memes from police departments and led to 50 investigations when it was revealed by the group Reveal. The point is this here. White America, and we have to be explicit in saying it, Ali, white America must say enough is enough. We are going to reject the racist appeals, and we're not going to vote along the lines of race. That's also identity politics that we never would like to discuss.
No, you're right, and I love the fact that the two of you always come armed with lots and lots of facts and details. I do want to remind people, you can vote. There are lots of opportunities to figure out how to do it, but NBC has a version of it called Plan Your Vote. You can go there, you put in your state, it'll tell you how you get a ballot, where you cast that ballot. Do not let disinformation and nonsense stop you from voting. Thanks to both of you. Brittany Packnett Cunningham is an MSNBC contributor and the founder of Love and Power Works, and Roland Martin is the host of the Roland Martin Unfiltered Digital Show, if you didn't see that in the shot that he's sitting in front of. Still ahead.